Welcome everyone. Behind this a little bit complicated long title, the purpose of this talk is to share the way we use to find vulnerability in SAP system. So usually I got the question, okay, how you find this? Why you find it and not other people? I don't know. So this time I try to explain everything, and the vulnerability itself, you will see this is nothing crazy, but at least I will try to provide the path. One slide about me, very quickly, a few numbers. So I work since 20 years on SAP System. I started as SAP Basis Administrator, and then after 10 years I switched myself to SAP Security. And since the last 6 years, I guess, I work for Onapsis as a security researcher. So I'm full-time security researcher on SAP System. And the last number I can say is I find more than 100 vulnerability in SAP System. Onapsis, just one word about what is Onapsis. This is a company dedicated to ERP security. So, of course, SAP is one of the biggest, big ERP systems. So we do a lot of SAP security. One question for you: who do not know what is SAP? Cool. A lot of people already know. So, very quickly, I like to say that SAP runs the world. Simply like that. SAP, it's a vendor, and they provide, the sales, what we call, a business application. So, the company buys this business application and use this business application. And I feel like more like 90% of the company use SAP. All the big company use SAP system. All right. So this is where they can manage everything: the HR, the financial transfer, etc., etc. So if you compromise an SAP system, basically you compromise the business data. All right. I will not go very deeper of what is SAP because this is not the purpose of this talk. So I've focused myself on SAP system. One thing also, we work a lot with the SAP response team, the security response team, and what I will present today, it's what we like to call it coordinate disclosure. So they already know everything about the slide, so no surprise for them today. All right. How the story starts? Everything starts with a little SAP pentest. All right. It was a very, very little SAP pentest. So it's a 3-day SAP pentest, very tiny. The scope was also very short. This was only 2 systems, one production and one quality system. All right, perfect. And for me, this is the first time I saw a need to deal with the system is an S/4HANA. So SAP provide a lot of different kind of system. They are the SAP NetWeaver, etc., etc. And now they provide the S/4HANA. And for me, it was the first time I deal with S/4HANA inside the cloud. So the customer has this system externalized in one of cloud. One slide about what we call RISE on SAP. I just quote what I put in the reference on the bottom. What SAP calls a RISE on SAP, or RISE with SAP. It's a way SAP help customer to migrate the system to the cloud, if they are already an SAP system, but also they help to migrate any kind of ERP system to the cloud. And you can choose the cloud infrastructure you want. Could be the Google, Amazon, Microsoft, or the SAP Cloud itself. So, and again, you can have some, what they call on-premise, private cloud, public cloud, etc., etc. So, today, during the pentest, I need to deal with this kind of system. every pentest starts like that. I scan the system and I access to all the services. I don't know if there are some pentester in the room, but this is normal with an SAP to have all these kind of services open. Now, more and more, the company try to filter the services, the access to services, but this is all the services you can find when you scan an SAP system. So the surfaces of attack is quite interesting. So for me, this is not a surprise. We continue. So I start with the pen test very classical. I test all very classical things, the default password, the attack on all the well-known attack on the gateway, the message server, the ICM, etc., etc. This is kind of attack very specific to SAP. I will not go deeper on each attack, don't worry. But the very important thing is nothing works. The SAP system was completely up to date, closed, good configuration. And I remember I was on the first day, and I say, oh, it could be maybe a long pen test because I didn't find any entry. All right. And on the second day, I find something because I'm here. I found something in these particular services, the host control services. In the slide and also in the documentation, you can find host control services, but also its name Start SAP Services or SAP Host Agent Services. But everything is the same thing. So the services listen on these two ports, 1128 and 1129, 1128 for HTTP listener and 1129 for HTTPS listener. This is a well-known services for SAP security guys. I work on this one, I don't know, the last 3 years. I found few vulnerability on it already. So for me, this is not something new to learn. And what I find in these services is, one thing about these services, remotely, you can access to these services using a SOAP request. So this is HTTP post request with SOAP. And you have access to 3 namespaces: SAP control, SAP host control, and SAP OS call. Inside these 3 namespaces, you have access to web method, let's say function, and if you addition everything, you have more like 150 function. So this is a lot of web method you can access. But in all these web method, only 10 of them is accessible remotely without authentication. And this 10 of them is well known. They're like very tiny function to like just have a ping or stuff like that. So this function was already analyzed in the past, and nothing was found. But what I found during this pen test is I tried to access to this one. The function was get OS data. Normally, what I expected, it's what you can see on the top. It's like this function is you get an error. This is like you have no you need to be authenticated to access to this function. This is a normal things, but on the bottom, during the pen test, what I receive the response. Like it's work remotely. What's happened? Because I deal with this support control a lot, and this is the first time I figure out that I have access to this get OS data. Okay. I continue to try to look on all other functions. Maybe I can find something. I find that I have access also to this one. Normally, it's not possible to access to this one remotely. Locally, you can. This is normal, but remotely, normally not. So I have the version of the SAP OS collector, for example. I get also the list of the instances working in this SAP system with some the version, etc. So it's validated that this is a well up-to-date system. So okay. And also I find this one. This one, it's there are a little story for this one, because just imagine that you test all the function one by one, and the response is very quick. Okay. You click on this one, you execute, and the service run, and I don't know if you already do some pen tests, but this is a thing like, oops, maybe I break something. So you wait for the answer, and it took like more than 7 seconds to get the content. And look, we have close to 2 megabytes of data. And this is only text. And there are no images. This is a text. And what we find inside this content, this is the OS information. A lot of OS information. The process running, the listener, some content of the file, like etc, OS, etc., etc., etc. We get a lot of OS information. So, okay, at least I find something, but I still do not understand why I have access to this function. Normally, you cannot. And inside the content of in this result, inside this 2 megabytes of data, I get access to the SAP host control configuration file. So this is what this is, the SAP host agent. Remember, SAP host agent is SAP host control, it is the same. So I can see the configuration of the services. Like I say, I worked for many years on it. I pretty know all the parameters involved in these services, and this is the first time I see this one. Service local connection set to compat. Compatibility, maybe, something. And at this point, I imagine it maybe I have access remotely to some function because of this parameter. So what I did, I stopped working on the customer system and I start working on in our lab. I set up exactly the same configuration. So I configured the SAP host control with this parameter. I restart everything, and then I try to access to the same function, and it's work. So I can validate. Okay, remotely I have access to this kind of function because of these parameters. All right. So I do my job, and I find that we have access to 32 additional functions remotely that normally accessible only locally. And most of them require authentication. Even if you are able to access remotely, you need to provide a credential. But few of them, 12, do not require any kind of authentication. So it means now, because of this parameter, remotely without authentication, we can call all these functions through one HTTP request in the SOAP, etc., on port 1128. So this is where we jump in the second stage. It was the end of the execution part of the pen test, so it was on Tuesday night. So on Wednesday, I start working on the report as usual, and I have not a lot of things to provide because I didn't compromise the system. It's quite new for me to not compromise an SAP system, but okay. And I look for the information about the parameter. Nothing. Whoa. Okay, nothing on Google, nothing on this is a SAP support portal when you have access to all the nodes, all the information, all the documentation, nothing on the SAP forum, the community forum. This parameter is like completely unknown. Alright, so for me, as a security researcher, it's leveled up a little my curiosity. But, alright. I report to SAP. I report, for us, it was a vulnerability because, I reported like, hey, if you enable this parameter, you have access remotely to a lot of function, and one of these function, for example, the OS collector, you can have a lot of information, remotely without authentication. Too much. So we report it, and SAP answer, thank you, perfect, we know about this parameter, thank you. Alright, so we answer back, can you give me the documentation because we would like to provide to the customer to have some information. And they did not answer. Or they say, yeah, we will release the documentation. So there are no documentation for this parameter? Whoop. So again, it's like, okay, why not? So for me, it's like, okay, we finish the pen test, we provide the report, we do not provide any documentation more than, take a look at this parameter and try to avoid you to use it. But this is where we start to do some research now. Everything was stopped on Wednesday. I'm on Thursday, and I start looking at this SAP host control, and I start looking on this new expose, what the parameter expose this new function, the list of the 12 function. So, a little introduction about the OS control to be sure everyone understands. This is an example of an SAP environment. It's good to know that SAP, there are several versions. For example, SAP NetWeaver, Java, SAP NetWeaver ABAP, S4HANA. You can find a lot of kind of products running on SAP. SAP can work on any kind of OS, Windows, Linux, Unix, everything. And also, it's work on different databases. There are one component exists in whole SAP server. This is the SAP host control, the SAP host agent. All right. Like I said, the SAP host agent is present on all systems, and the purpose of this SAP host control is to do some what we call a lifecycle task. Like SAP administrator can stop and start the system using these components. They can prepare for an upgrade. They can update the kernel. They can do all the function listed by the services. So a lot of function. This is OS independent. This is a Java component, so it's work on Windows, Linux, Unix, and this is mandatory to have this kind of services. So it's present everywhere. If you do this couple of commands, you can learn a lot of 3 important things about the SAP host control. First thing, behind these services, there are 3 binary. There are more binary, but at least 3 binary running. So the SAP host exec, the SAP host call, and the SAP Start Service. 2 of these binary run as the services as root. Or on Windows, this is NT system. So very high privileges. So this is always interesting to look on this kind of services. And as you can see, there are also a listener, a HTTP listener, listening on 1128 for HTTP, 1129 for HTTPS. So it means remotely, if you attack the 1128 port, behind, maybe you attack a binary services running as root. Okay? So, this is the free namespace. So this is the same screenshot I put during the SAP pentest introduction. So, you have free namespace, a lot of function, etc., etc. So, this is where we start. So I start one by one, very simple. I test it. I try to figure out what's going on behind, what kind of. I try to guess the function, etc., etc. And I found the one thing in this request. This is the same for the send request asynchron. These 2 requests is behind. This is the same, but I will explain with this one. This is an example when we send the SOAP through HTTP to the SAP OS call namespace. And for example, in my first test for request I put 1 and value I put 1, and I receive like RTC 0. RTC return code, I guess. I test few things, nothing changed. I always say get 0. So I launch burp and I say, okay, let's test all the number from 1 to 10,000, and I launch the burp to test all of this kind of payload. And from the number 100, as you can see, of the size of the response length change at 100. So it means, okay, now we get something. And for example, in the request, if you put 102, you receive the date of the time. Okay, cool. And also, this is a way like there are 0, a new line, the time, and new line, new line, new line, new line. Alright. Why not? Alright, so again, I test all of them. I try to find, I already tried to inject, I already tried to do something, but nothing worked really. So I changed the approach, and instead of using remotely the HTTP listener, I tried to use directly the SAP OS call binary. Remember, we attack the 112A port through the namespace saposcol using the send request. So it's also possible to use directly the binary. So I'm logging in the system, and the saposcol, you can launch the saposcol, you can stop it, etc. And also you can use the saposcol in dialog mode. Dialog mode means, okay, you have like a menu, and you can use the command line to execute something. Interesting, because so I made some few tests, and for example, I found that, okay, if you call the command line in the dialog, in the saposcol, the ask call time, you receive the time. And with the same, exactly the same format, like the 0 and the new line, etc. So, thank you, Captain Obvious. Well, I understand, okay, when you send the request 102, behind it, this is exactly the same than calling the SAP OS collector with the call time. And this time, I have access to the system on the command line, and for me, this is very more convenient to test the input, because I can use my script, a lot of little shell script, to try to fuzz all the entries. So I try to connect, so I try to basically fuzz all of them in script, and I crash the SAP OS call. Remember, what crashes is the SAP OS call, and the SAP OS call is a binary running as root. So we have a crash of a root binary. Few information about this crash. It crashes at the end of the function during the return, and also we compromise RSP register. So to simplify, you basically can jump everywhere we want. Also, for the binary itself, there are no really protection, only the stack execution protection. This is not normal. Usually on SAP kernel, you do not see this kind of low protection. Normally everything is set, but not this time. I don't know why. Okay. We have a crash. We have the RSP register when we can put everything, but there are the ASLR. You don't know what kind of attack we can do. Remember this output, the hardware config information. When we get a lot of information about the OS, all right. We get also this one. So in the middle of the content, it looks like, again, I just guess it. It looks like behind the function do something like that, like cat/proc/star/stats. So in this file, this particular file exists for whole process running. You can have a lot of information about the process running. So as you can see, you have the process 1, 10, etc., etc. So we can find the SAP OS call itself, and you have the PID, the SAP OS call, and followed by a lot of number. And inside this number, this one, it's the current RIP addresses. So by launch this function, you grab the information and you have the current RIP. 99% of the time, the SAP OS call just wait. It just do nothing. So 99% of the time, the SAP OS call wait in this libc function. So yes, we have a list of the libc address. And we have the libc version in the same content. So libc version, libc version, we can bypass the ASLR, we have the libc of the version, we have everything, so we can do an attack like return to libc. So this is why I have a POC for that. So I just execute my exploit. The first thing you do, you try, can you stop the light because it's very, better? Yeah? Okay. So, this is the attacker point of view on the bottom, and on the top, I'm just connected to the SAP system. So, on the bottom, I execute the exploit. The first thing I do, I try to request the hardware data. So as you can see, this is very long. Then from this hardware output, I retrieve the name, I retrieve the libc version, also the saposcol.exe, and I can calculate the libc basis. And from that, as a POC, I just use the one gadget things. One gadget works in CTF, but in real world, it's not working. So this is why I just choose for the POC. So on the top, I just load GDB, I attach to the saposcol, running as root. I execute my exploit, and I put a breakpoint just before the crash. As you can see, the RSP now points to the one gadget in the system of the libc, and if we continue, it tries to execute the shell. Of course, it's not working because this is not like a CTF when you have the prompt of the services, because we send the HTTP request when we put our payload in the SOAP request. This payload is sent to the 1128 port. It was forwarded to the saposcol. The saposcol executes the request and crash. So this is why we do not receive any shell this time. All right, back. Of course, I report it. Everything is patched using this SSN. SSN stands for SAP Security Notes. So everything is patched in this note with this CView. All right. At this point, I have what I just showed, so I can execute one gadget, I can try to jump to one addresses, but I have some difficulty to have a full exploit because of a lot of things. I will not go deeper on it, but basically I try hard to have a real exploit, a real RCE, but it's not working. We were on Friday at this time, Friday afternoon, and I say, okay, too much for me, I will stop and I will back it later. So when I back on Monday, now, so Monday after, I decide to, okay, let's put this exploit behind and let's continue to check all other function. So I test all of them, and on the last one, I find also something interesting, because I forget to say, but the memory corruption work only on Linux. On Windows is not crashes. So, yeah. So, I look for this one, the configure outside discovery. One thing is very interesting. This time, I'm not in the saposcol namespace. I'm inside the SAP host control namespace. Alright, so this is not the saposcol binary behind. This is another one. So, locally, as an administrator, you can log in into the system, and you can use inside the SAP kernel, there are one binary named the SAP host control. So the SAP host control, you can call the function provided by the SAP host control namespace. So you need to provide the name of the functions and the argument, etc., etc. So when you type for the help, you have the configure outside discovery, and you have all the information you want. The help is like that, very, very huge. And to be honest, at the beginning, yeah, until now, I do not exactly understand what is the purpose of this function, but yeah. What we understand, okay, this is what you can send. You call the function, you set the parameter enable, or you can also disable something, and you provide a host, a port, and a username and password. Alright, and as output, you get something like, okay, a new configuration file is created. Right. So, we try a lot of things. I tried a lot of things at this time. I tried to I tried to use my script to try to further again because this is I'm connecting to the system, but nothing really works. Okay. One thing I do every time I do an analysis, I put somewhere in my screen or another screen, I put the log file. I set the log file traces to the highest level as possible. In this time, this is level 3. And I do my analysis. So when I do some particular, I try to use the function, the configure outside discovery, I found this entry in the log file. There are two very important things. The first thing is, as user root, it tried to execute some command. In this example, it tried to execute the move command to move a temporary file to another file. But I'm the user. I'm not the root at this time. I say, okay, I'm not sure I understand everything, but why not? And so I test a lot of things because when inside the log file you see, okay, something happened and I can execute root command. If I find an OS injection, it's like a game over. So I tried a lot and I failed during 2 days, maybe 3 days. I don't exactly remember, but this is kind of this timing. And I decide to sniff the local port on 1128. I don't know why exactly. I don't know exactly what I expect to see, but I see that when you use the suppose control binary using the user, behind the binary crafts a HTTP request and sends this request to the local host on port 1128, and then the listener behind the port executes our request as root. So this is how we achieve to execute something as root, is because the binary performed an HTTP request locally. Okay? And this is the request, the SOAP request, to perform the configure outside discovery. This is exactly the same request you can send remotely. And it's worked because of the parameter. You remember the service local connection parameter. Two important things in this request. No authentication, nothing. And also there are new parameters in the game. So instead of provide just the username and the port, and the host and the port, there are also new parameters. And I find in this parameter, in one of these parameters, I find in one of these parameters, I find an OS command injection. So what's going on? This is the attacker point of view. Can you slow the light, please? All right. Thank you. So this is the attacker point of view. I have two terminals. On the bottom one, I just launch my listener, and on the top one, I just execute one script. And what this script only wants the host name, the port. It's 1128 or 1129. This is work also as HTTPS. You provide if Windows or Unix, it just it's not the same payload for sure, and you provide the command you want. So in this example, what I do, I just attack my system on port 1128. I say, okay, the target is Linux or Unix, and I put my reverse shell in this way. So it's executing. This is one HTTP request, and I receive the shell, and I'm root. Yoo-hoo! Like I said, the vulnerability itself is not crazy, but it exists. I report it. Everything is corrected. This SAP security note, and using this CB. All right. Few recommendations. First of all, of course, try to patch the SAP host agent kernel. This patch, these two patches, the two first one, it's a security patch, and basically it provides a new binary, all right? And this patch is very easy to implement. I mean, when we speak about SAP systems, sometimes we speak about a huge system, a lot of terabyte system, etc. This is not the case. In this case, we patch the SAP host control, and this is like a tiny application. So it's like you can stop it, your SAP system still working. So you can do it with low risk. This is what I would like to say. So it is not an SAP upgrade. So try to patch it. Also, verify if inside the configuration file you use the service local connection, because if you use it, it means you are vulnerable remotely to this kind of attack. If you do not use it, this is a default to not use it. You are not vulnerable remotely, but only locally. So locally, this is a LPE, and remotely, this is a RCE as root. Also, you can, from this version of the host control kernel, so the SAP host agent 7.2 PL61, sorry, they remove the parameter. So this is this is not a patch, I don't know, but at least this removes, this parameter is completely depreciated, and from this version, it will not exist anymore. So this attack is not possible remotely. Also, the last thing, it's, this attack works because I get access doing, if you have access to the port 1128 or 1129. Usually, this is not the case. Over internet, this is not exist. You can scan, you will not find this kind of port over internet. But, inside the enterprise network, it's happen. You connect, and, in the pentest I do at the beginning, in the introduction, in the pentest, I simulate like, I'm connecting in as a normal user inside the network, of the customer. So, with everything, now you are normally safe. And again, I repeat, I know, but this is not an SAP upgrade. This is just patch too little binary. A few lessons. I will finish with this part. This is not like a conclusion, but yeah, this is a conclusion. But I would like to provide few what we call takeaways. First of all, we are all. Everyone knows that, but obscurity is not security. There are few stories in the past, 10 years ago, also in SAP, but also on other kind of big vendor that try to hide some feature or to hide something, but it's not gonna work. One day, one time, some guys will find it, and you can use it. And this is the case for this parameter. I still don't know what is the purpose of this parameter. Yeah, try to hide it in it, is not gonna work. The second thing is the security should not be taken granted. I mean, it's quite hard to say that, but, even if you externalize your SAP system to subcontractor, to the cloud, to, another team, I don't know, it's very, very important to keep what we call the trust but verify. Okay, we are inside the cloud. Normally everything is up to date, etc. Like I discovered during the pen test, everything was up to date, trust me. But sometimes you can find some configuration and something, and even if you run on premise, in the cloud and everything, try to verify, to check, if everything's good. The third thing I would like to share, it's very important as a security researcher. I don't know for you, but for what we call offensive security researcher, we try to find vulnerability. And it's very important to have a good relationship with the vendor. Because it's happened, if you deal with a big vendor like SAP, this is just an example, but I learned some story with other one. The goal is the same. We find vulnerability to secure the system, and the vendor want to patch it. And it's very crucial to have good relationship, because at the beginning, for example, in this one, when we report the parameter, the communication was like, not weird, but it's like we have the feeling that we touch something sensitive, and it takes some time to achieve to get something. So after we report the parameter, we also report a vulnerability, the first one, the memory corruption, and then we can discuss and we can correct everything. So again, this is very crucial. And the last thing I would like to say, again, this is for the offensive security researcher, breaking is way more easy than protecting. So in this research, for me, it took me like 10 days, I would say, to 2 weeks, including the pentest. And I know to correct this kind of issue for SAP, for example, it will take like 3 months. And this time it takes like 2 and 3 months. So again, I would like to very, very thank you the SAP, but globally the Defender side. I know I provide some offensive talk, but I would like also to kudo all the Defender side. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yvan. So now we're going on to the Q&A. Are there any questions from across the room? One question?
Everything was clear.
So you had a parameter that wasn't documented or anything. How did it get there?
I have what?
You had a parameter that was set to compat.
What?
It wasn't documented.
No.
How did it end up in the configuration?
It's because this parameter opens some services accessible remotely. I found these services remotely, and one of these functions is to have a lot of information of OS configuration, and inside this configuration, I find the configuration of the services itself.
That I understand, but how did that parameter end up in the config of the active system, since nobody knows what it does or where it comes from?
Okay. I don't know. I really don't know. We tried to understand who put this parameter, why, but we don't know. And I haven't any explanation. We try also to speak with SAP, like, hey, what is the purpose of this parameter? And we do not get the answer. So sorry, I really, really don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions before we wrap up the talk? No? Okay, so thank you, Yvan, for From Unknown Perimeter to Root, a story of unexpected intrusion testing results.